this guy is crazy. He's 71 and he's pumping movies out like this.
Prolific.
Not just his performance, but his work rate and ethic must be through the roof to be doing 5 movies a year. It's insane.
That's right. And I think he produced this film. So he's not only just doing the acting side of things, he must be doing things in the background as well, which is, he's not retiring. He's not easing into retirement, this guy.
Definitely not. He's got a production house, I think. He did small things like, I didn't even notice it, but when I was going through his IMDb, he was a voiceover in Jana Gana Mana.
What?
So, yep.
That is amazing.
He's so, I think the word you use, prolific, is exactly right, man.
I wonder if his career has had ebbs and flows, or whether it's just been like an unbreakable trajectory. Is he moving into another golden era for him? And this is like the third or fourth of his golden era, because I don't know how long he's been acting, but it must be for a very long time, right?
Yes.
I imagine he's been around since the 80s, or maybe even sooner, but at least the 80s. But I wonder, like, is this another like second, third, fourth win for him? Or has he just been doing hit after hit since he started? Like, you would love to know.
Definitely, I'd love to know the progression of sort of seeing, if this is his best period, because I mean, the range as he's going at is completely insane. Like, he's not doing anything. He's not just like typecasting or doing similar roles.
No,
he's doing every single movie of his is completely different. Like,
so
very
different.
little carryover.
No, you're absolutely right, man. And when you think about people his age as actors, and I think of like his Hollywood comparators, right? Like, who's like maybe Al Pacino or Robert De Niro, they're basically at a point in their career where they're pretty comfortable, right? And they're playing versions of themselves, right? That is Al Pacino playing John something, or that is Robert De Niro playing this other character. But Mammootty is like completely invested, and you only see the character he's playing. You don't think it's Mammootty. He's still churning out creative roles. Yeah, it's inspiring to see, man. Not resting on his laurels.
Really is. And what makes it even more incredible is he's a leading man in all these movies, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned like
Good point.
De Niro. You mentioned Al Pacino. A lot of older actors, like at this stage, they're normally just side characters, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Not like the star of the film. They're not required to do as much as what Mammootty is doing throughout these movies. Like, and again, the amount of hours he's putting into these movies, just acting wise, because these movies are so long, it just makes it even more incredible. He's acting at 71 for a longer period of time than anybody in Hollywood's doing. He is incredible. I'm so blown away every time I see him at this point. It's impressive.
Man, from a guy who I basically didn't know 6 or 7 months ago to now, I feel like he's quickly climbing the ranks of maybe one of the greatest actors of our generation, man. Like, when I think of great actors, now he's in the conversation.
Yes.
Because of, and what, we've seen 4 films of his or something, like 3 or 4. Like, that's leaves a strong impression, man.
Greatest actors, honestly, man. I don't know. You can make a very good argument for that. I don't know how you would even argue against it, because what hasn't he accomplished? He's
that's right.
From what we have seen, the very limited range that we have seen of his, he's shown us that he can be an action star. He can be a gangster boss. He can be this reserved
everyday man
character, everyday man.
Yes,
exactly right. The range is incredible. Each role he's absolutely knocked out the park. It's just, and you're right, he's not playing himself. He's always playing somebody different, right?
That's right. Yes,
we saw that in this again. We saw that in Rorschach, how he's a maniac. We saw in Bisham, as I said, he's a mob boss, and
that's right.
We'll move on to segue.
He is playing. Man. He is a character.
Yeah, exactly right. And his performance in this one, man, this is, I don't know what you think about this one, man, but this is, to me, like almost next level. It's very nuanced.
It really is. It really is, man. Like, where do you start with this performance? I mean, firstly, you start with the fact that he played 2 different characters in this film, right? Like, he has the James character, and then he has Sundaram character, and he seamlessly transitions between them the first time, right? Like, he just gets out of the bus, walks in, and he's completely a new man. It's not like something happened to create that. He just seamlessly transitions into this role, almost as if he's been that person for all of his life, right? It is so beautifully done. The fact that he can play this everyday guy, right? Like, it just as you were saying, in Bhishma Parvam, he plays this kind of mob boss. In but Rorschach, he's this anti-hero seeking vengeance. Here, he's just kind of like starts off the movie as a grouchy old man, right?
Yeah.
Like he's like not really having fun, but at the same time, he's one of the boys because he's like having a chat with them while they're under a tree having a respite on their journey back from Tamil Nadu to Kerala, and he's having a laugh with them. But then he's complaining about the Tamil food that he's eating. And he's just like a very ordinary person, someone who I would expect to be an ordinary 71-year-old person from Kerala, I guess. And then he transitions into this other person, this full-blown Tamilian speaking Tamil as well. Like, and look, I don't even know if that's a common thing because they're neighboring states. Obviously, do people in Kerala just speak Tamil and vice versa? Is that a common skill set, or is he just a prolific actor who has, is mastered that for this role, like again, but seamlessly steps into this role of a Tamilian rural person ingrained in this small community and just does it so effortlessly, man. Like it is just a seamless performance, and there's not a moment that I saw Mammootty in this. He was James and Sundaram for me.
Yes. Yeah, man. It's the language question is interesting. I want to talk about that point a little later, but it is impressive that he can sort of transition like he did in this movie. And some of the scenes in this, like, so powerful, and they're so powerful, honestly, almost just on the back of him.
Yes.
Like, some of the scenes took my breath away. Like, there were scenes, like, I think when he's one that really captured my when I was watching this movie was basically that time when he was being confronted by everybody and he just lays down on the ground.
Yes. He's like, this is my land. This is where I belong. And it's so impactful.
So powerful. Oh, man. It's just, I don't know how you're not moved by something.
And the remarkable thing is, you've been with that Sundaram character for like 15 minutes and you still are entirely bought into that. You're like, okay, he is 100% Sundaram and this is his life that he's living.
Yeah, man. It's, his performance in this has some really, really strong moments. The other one that really got me was the, I think maybe the climax scene when he sort of really breaks down and you realize what he's gone through.
Yes.
And my God, that scene.
That last half an hour and that scene in particular is just a masterclass in acting for me, man. Like the way the world is slowly crumbling around this character of Sundaram, right? The people don't recognize him and he realizes people aren't talking to him as they usually would. The people aren't buying his milk as they usually would. He drives past the temple and he's like, this temple wasn't here yesterday, because in his mind, the 2 years that this Sundaram character has been missing never happened. And he doesn't recognize this country anymore, this land anymore. And his barber has passed away. And you see his world just slowly crumbling. And then he goes back to his house as Sundaram and he starts eating and he starts crying. And he's like, why isn't my daughter here? It like breaks your heart, man. The suffering that he's feeling at that point, like you feel it. I felt such sadness for him.
Yeah,
and at that moment, I was like, I'm okay if he remains a Sundaram. Don't worry about James. Even though he's got a wife and child waiting for him, I'm like, the sadness of that scene was so well portrayed and felt so real. I'm like, no, this guy believes he's Sundaram. Let him live his life with his family, his mum and dad, and his daughter and wife. Like, that's how powerful it was for me. His ability to evoke empathy and pity, just done so flawlessly, man. That scene took my breath away.
No, that was really, really powerful. And the way you put it was, exactly how I felt as well. It was, I mean, a lot of credit has to go to just this writing and so the build up of sort of making you empathize for him throughout the whole movie. But it's in that moment when you're there, like, you got to remember, he's not a character. He's an actor performing this.
Yes, that's right.
At times you just forget that. You're like, wait, this is so real and so raw. Did he actually go through this? Like,
it feels real.
It felt so real and so well done. And one other point, like, unlike his other roles that he's done, and even like most roles, you're playing somewhat of a character. Like you're in Rorschach, he's almost like a character actor. Like he's going through some crazy thing. In Bhishma Parvam, he's a gangster. Like he can
crime boss. Like
he can play that up. But in this, he's just a regular, normal.
That's it.
Day to day.
That's it.
Man, and to make a character like that so powerful, it's not.
Yes.
He's not a cop. He's not a superhero. He's not.
No, that's right. He's not doing anything remarkable. He's just
Yeah.
living his ordinary life.
Yeah.
And yet to leave such an impact in such a short amount of time. And that is why some of my favorite parts of this film, not as impactful as the scene we were just talking about, like when he's under the tree talking to his friends and they're all having a laugh. He just feels like an ordinary man.
Yeah.
When he's Sundaram and he's getting coffee and telling people this random story about bartering for goods or whatever, he just feels like an ordinary person that could very well live in a rural village in Tamil Nadu. Now, I've never been to a rural village in Tamil Nadu, but, I can feel like this is a real person. It just, he must be, as an actor, a man who's very empathetic and very observant about the world, because he can just go all extremes, like as a violent anti-hero to just an ordinary man going about his day-to-day life, as he is in parts of this film.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, we'll probably transition a little bit to sort of this movie's look and visual feel, which was amazing. But just in relation to that, like, he is very much part of that. Like, when you sort of mentioned that, the parts early on when they're sort of making the pilgrimage and he's having the Tamil food, he honestly feels like a uncle I would have known, like, growing up on these trips, just complaining about everything.
True. That's 100% true.
Yeah. Very much, and even with the scenes with the when he's with the boys, having the drinks and stuff. That's
classic.
It felt real, and he just seamlessly blends into that and almost carries it.
That's right.
Walken is like, this character is really, really authentic and real. And I'm not grown up in India, but I've done many trips growing up, lived in there for a bit as well. And that side of things definitely felt real. Like, going to the bus stops, having to see the driver getting angry that, he paid for his own fish and all that stuff.
It all feels like the concerns of an ordinary person trying to live their life.
Yeah. So, but man, but getting on to, like, obviously, this movie looks completely different. And we've got to give a lot of credit to the director here. Lijo Jose Pellissery. I don't think it's Jose. I think it's not Jose. Jose is Spanish, but I think this is Portuguese. So Lijo Jose Pellissery. Apologize if I've mispronounced that name, but I did try my best there. But look, he's pretty renowned director. I'm not really too sure know much more about him. But if this is any indication, he obviously has a very good idea as to how to shoot a movie in a very unique way and create a environment and atmosphere. That's really different. But what were your first impressions, man? Just on how this movie looked and everything.
Oh, man, I think first and foremost, this was a gorgeous film to look at. Like, there are parts of this that I almost felt like a dream. Just like the colors that were coming on screen, it almost felt like a little bit hypnotic to me. Just the beauty of the scenes that were playing constantly, and the colors, the brightness and the vividness of it. It felt a little bit dreamlike to me, and that's just such a incredible thing to portray in a film that is kind of about dreams and kind of sleep and all of those kind of things. I think the cinematic style, or the technique that most was evident to me, was framing throughout this film. This is a film that has been meticulously planned. Every shot feels meticulously planned and achieves a certain purpose and has been intended to convey a certain feeling. And full props to the director and the cinematographer for pulling this off. But the way that people are arranged in every scene, the way that structures are arranged in every scene, I can't help but think that there must have been a reason why those decisions were made. There's a great deal of thought that's been given to this film. And I almost feel like you could analyze this film in like a film studies course, because it just feels so perfectly executed in so many ways. There are a couple of like framing sequences that really stick out in my mind. You touched on that first one earlier. This is where the villagers and the people on the bus first confront James/Sundaram and try to understand what is going on with him. And he lies on the ground and says, "This is my land."
Oh boy!
But if you see the way that that's set up, he sits in the middle of the frame with his father, and they're both leaning on the pillars of the house. On one corner of the screen, there's all of the villagers kind of framed within two houses, and on the other side of the screen, there's all of the people on the bus with him, and they're framed on the other side of the screen. And you just see a full panoramic view of that, and they're kind of perfectly segregated with Mammootty in the middle, leaning against kind of this wooden structure. just gorgeously done, man. There's another scene where the wife of James and their child is looking out a window, and then Sundaram's wife and her child is looking out of a window, and they're both in screen because they're both living in nearby houses or in nearby rooms, and it's just so flawlessly done, man. You can do nothing but appreciate the beauty of it and smile a little bit because it's just so gorgeously delivered. And, there are just constant framing sequences throughout the film, when they're going down narrow walkways and he's driving his bike down small alleyways or vast fields. It just shows the landscape in both its smallness and vastness so well, man. This is, in many ways, a masterclass in filmmaking as well.
Yeah. No, it is. It's a masterclass in filmmaking for many, many ways. I think it's fantastic. I'm on the same board. I'm same page as you. The framing was definitely one that stuck out. Also, the stillness. Like, it's very exaggerated, right? Like, there's an extra, not 1 or 2 seconds. There's extra, like, 10 or 20 seconds they spend on each
lingering on
scene.
something.
In fact, I did something before a little bit. I was actually watching this movie a little bit just to recap what sort of happened. I was watching it on 1.5 speed.
Interesting. Okay.
It still felt solid. It still felt like it felt like this was so intentionally drawn out.
Yes.
That this really, and what that all did, man, was like it feels like we touched on sort of the authenticity about this a little bit before, but this is one of the most like authentic, real, intimate movies that I can remember for a long time, and that's because of that. Like, he puts a camera basically in a position where you would be a member of the world or in the crowd, like you're just looking.
Yes.
There's like a few scenes when, like, I think it's kind of comedic when he first takes a bike and he's just going off, and there's like chasing him and they're running behind him, and you just see it in panels, like you see it in like a frame and another frame. So it kind of feels like you're in the house and you're just seeing something go past you.
Yes. It feels like you're just observing the life of an ordinary person and someone's just put a camera and is just following this story.
That's right.
It feels so authentic. Yeah.
Yeah. Other scenes, like I think I think when they first get off the bus stop and they're having that scene where the man is making the dosa, I think, or he's making something.
Yes.
And like it stays on that for a long time. Like there's no dialogue. But it feels like you're actually just like maybe in the restaurant or sitting with this guy who's making dosa and you're just watching people walk past.
That's right, because it doesn't show just one dosa being made. He makes like 5 or 6, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It just lingers like maybe 10, 15 seconds more than an ordinary shot would.
Yeah. So it feels so intimate. This movie is so intimate. And you mentioned the framing around the narrow, alleys that he's driving through and stuff like that. And that really builds a closeness and intimacy of how small everything is in the small village.
Yes.
It was, visually this was really, really different. I think the one that sticks out to me the most was, and this is going to be interesting, the bus ride.
Yeah.
That they take after the pit stop and they're sort of just going along. Like that scene itself would have been done in about 30 seconds, I think.
Yep.
Or maybe a minute maximum. You have a few dialogue here and there, you show some landscapes, and you're on to the next scene.
Yes.
Right? That scene almost took like, I think, 10 minutes or so. And
wow.
I'm very 10 minutes. It felt like 10 minutes. It felt like quite a while.
Time,
they just did things like, they just have a quick transition to basically where you can really hear like the sound of like the rickety bus and a window open. So, stuff like that, and like being on Indian buses before and sort of hearing what that feels like, it felt really close to that. I'm sure, man, if this is a movie you're watching, you're probably our age, in the mid-30s, the like road trips that you have will probably feel a bit like this. Like,
I think so.
You have some people that are a bit grouchy. You have someone that wants to start a song up. You have some people that are a bit intoxicated.
That's right.
You have some elder ladies. It's a mix of everything.
And then there's that period where, there is a lull where no one's really saying anything, right? And some people are falling asleep and others are just kind of staying awake and just observing their surroundings. This feels so real to life.
Yeah. Before we move on to sort of the story, man, I want to also mention, like, you didn't mention it before, but visually, just this movie was so beautiful. And it was so beautiful using what? Basically, like what? Still photography in a country, in a small Tamil Nadu, in the Tamil Nadu region. Like,
that's right.
It's not CGI. Obviously, it's not big landscapes or cities or panoramas of like, big, Tokyo City or something like that, or lights and flashing Vegas. Nothing.
That's right.
We're literally just seeing like a lady put like cow dung on her house, and they've somehow made that just entrancing.
Cinematic. Yeah. Somehow,
Yeah.
completely entrancing. You're absolutely right. And it's just using the natural landscape around you, whether it's the orange of the fields or the greenery of the trees or the blueness of the sky, the pink and the green of the houses, which are also really colorful. They're not just like the red houses that we have in Victoria or Canberra or whatever. Like there's just random colors strewn across these houses. It all feels so vivid and it jumps out at the screen at you.
Definitely, man. It's like, we've always complimented Malayalam movies, and I think we touched on this a little bit in. I remember vaguely, quite distinctly, in Minimorali, how we really enjoyed how they showed the days in and days out with the boat riding in the country. But this movie takes it to like a whole different level. Like it transports you, from Melbourne, Australia, to this small
a rural town in Tamil Nadu.
Tamil Nadu. I've never felt like I was as close to Tamil Nadu as this movie has made me feel.
Yes,
that's insane.
It's remarkable. That is amazing storytelling. Yeah,
it really is. We move on a little bit, man. To sort of the main point of this movie, man. The actual storyline.
Yeah,
pretty different, right? Like
it is so different, man. Like it's in a way a straightforward plot, right? Like some churchgoers returning from a pilgrimage, bus stops in a nondescript part of a Tamil Nadu area, fields all around. A guy walks in, walks into a village and assumes another personality. People are trying to figure out what's going on. Like in a way, a simple plot, but it asks so many questions of the audience, and just watching people respond to this individual who has morphed into a completely new person halfway through the film, or like a third of the way through the film. It is just completely engrossing. I never thought something like this would capture my attention as much as it did. And I was spellbound by this movie from start to end, man. And you're right, there was vast stretches where nothing was going on, but it didn't stop me being absolutely engrossed in, firstly, figuring out this mystery, right? What exactly is going on? How did James suddenly become Sundaram, a man he presumably has never met, but is acting, for all intents and purposes, with the same mannerisms, speaks fluent Tamil, is now a devout Hindu worshipper, and to the extent that even his wife, Sundaram's wife, recognizes him, even though it's not the same man, but the familiarity and the mannerisms are all there. And some of the most joyful scenes are seeing how she interacts with him or is dealing with this. But such a simple story, but just asks so many questions of the audience. And while not a lot happens in this film and there are no answers, it lingers with you, this film, more so than a lot of films I've seen in recent times.
Yeah. Definitely, man. It definitely does. What are your thoughts on, because I think this is, look, I do believe this is a movie that's not for everyone.
True.
I do believe this movie will be a struggle for a lot of people. I don't know. I'm not saying that with a place of judgment. Like it's fine,
Yes.
But what do you think about the pacing of this movie? Like it was definitely, as you sort of mentioned, it does take its time. But what did you make out of it?
Look, I think as someone going into this film, I think the key characteristic you need to have is a degree of patience, because nothing happens quickly in this film. And if you're someone who needs constant action or plot twists and story beats to keep your interest, this might not be for you. And if you're someone who needs a big payoff at the end after waiting around and just following a person through their life, you're not going to get a payoff because you're left with more questions. So I think you're 100% right. This is not going to be for everyone. And I think there's a certain part of, and there is no judgment there, because you can look at this film and say that it means nothing at all, that this is a story without a purpose. Or you can be maybe like some other people, and I maybe fall into this category where you think this has some meaning, even if it's completely different to every person. So look, I think this is not going to be for everyone, but for some people, they're really going to find some joy in this film.
No, you're exactly right. And I think both of us came into this movie completely blind.
So 100%.
We had no idea what was in store.
What we're getting into.
We had no idea what was in store for us. I had the scene, Mammootty, Netflix. done.
In Mammootty we trust. In Netflix we trust.
pretty much. But it definitely is more like an art house or independent movie.
Totally. Yes.
Which is and then that itself is not for everybody as well. It's not a commercial
True.
movie.
Yes.
At all. But yeah, it was. I don't know, man. I like you. Basically I bought in to what this movie was trying to do very early on, and I
Yes.
accepted it. But I
Yes.
also accepted the fact that this movie might not much might happen in this movie. Like
Yes.
the synopsis is basically it. Like a man wakes up one day and goes to or wakes up or walks into another town as somebody else and assumes that person's identity. Um,
Yes.
and that's all that happens. There's nothing
That is
really
all
more
that
to it.
happens. Yeah,
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 in
there's nothing more to it.
in hour 45, which is short compared to most movies we've reviewed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in terms of it definitely is something that I think you should, if you don't watch these kind of movies, then probably this is going to be hard.
Yes.
Personally, I was on the same page as you, man. Like I was enjoying this because I just felt it was so nuanced and the small interactions that are there have such a big impact on the
100%.
character and building sort of the tragedy that's going to come ahead of us. So small things, like he's at the bar and he's just reenacting a scene from a movie or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
A little bit intoxicated. Uh, pretty cool to see intoxicated Mammootty. Uh,
One of my favorite
but
versions of Mammootty, yeah.
yeah. So it's really, they all played their part to them. Even though
So
not much
true, man.
happened. But the mystery element, I think that when it really hits the mystery, I think then I really gripped on because I think
Yes.
the first half an hour you do patiently wait for that to
Yeah.
come. Like
Yes.
when's something going to happen? Because it takes a long
Yes.
time for anything
Yes.
to happen. Relevant to how long the movie is. It's not a very long movie, so
No.
almost half an hour just goes in basically just setting up James, who doesn't get
Yes.
much of a character. you know,
Yeah.
at the end, it's more about Sundaram. But when that twist
Yeah.
really comes, then I think I really switched. I was like, trying to figure out. I was like, what's going on here? He's just
What's happening?
walking.
Yeah.
Does he know where he's going? Um, like is he going like at the start? I thought he was going to take a leak or something like that. But then
Yeah.
when he goes into the town,
With such confidence, right? Like he knows where
yeah,
he's
yeah,
going.
yeah,
Because I think one of the things is the people on the bus, when they follow him into the village, they realize that they didn't know this place existed. And I can
yes,
only imagine that they must have driven down that strip of road many times, right? Going from Kerala to Tamil Nadu,
yeah,
maybe. And if James hadn't walked in,
hmm
they would never have known that this
no,
community of people ever existed, which I thought was so
yeah.
fascinating.
And then it's almost like a shock factor at that point because like again,
Yes.
that's a moment his performance, but like how he embraced that role so well.
Yes.
And like I think the first scene he's just putting on the I think it's probably lungi because he's in Tamil Nadu.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and then basically he's wakes his wife up, or I guess his wife,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and just says sleep, I'll make coffee.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
starts complaining about everything, and you're like,
Like the most mundane thing, groceries.
yes,
He's like, "Oh, you never
yes,
tell me when things are about to run out. You only tell me when it has run out."
yeah. And
So
it's just to
good.
see everyone's state of shock around him.
That's
And
right.
then I think like the next scene is like I think like two other villagers come in and like, who the hell are you? And then they're basically like he replies to them like, oh hello, nice to see you. And he starts talking to
That's
them like,
it.
and you're just like you yourself are shocked. Like what this
Yeah, yeah,
movie does
yeah.
is you're in the world with them, so you're as shocked as everybody
100%.
else.
Dude, and I think this is another element to this film. I think there's while it's like a tranquil film and it's beautiful
Mm,
visually, I think there's always an underlying element where you're disoriented by what
yeah.
is going on in this film. You're always like, what just happened? You're like the villagers and the bus people trying to figure out what is this character doing? How do we get him back to being James? Like, how is he behaving the way he is? Another thing that I think feeds into that disorientation, and you might have observed it, there's just constant sounds in the
Yeah.
background. There's
There's
music playing, there's something always coming from the TV or the radio
yeah.
that people are listening to. There's very rarely a moment to just breathe and take
hmm
in what is happening because there's just a constant stream of things coming at you constantly. And so you always feel this underlying sense of like unease about what is going on in
Mm,
this situation, even as you're following the very mundane life of this guy going about
yeah.
his job of, going to the grocery stores, having a drink, feeding the cows, selling his milk.
hmm Yeah, it's interesting. I wanted to I was going to talk about that sort of a technique that the director used with the ongoing sort of commentary that sort of plays along throughout the movie.
Yeah.
It's like there's parts of it is music, parts of it's like commentary or news or
Yeah. Dialogue
like
from
snippets from
films.
movies. Yeah, exactly,
Yes. Yes.
stuff like that. But like, what do you think that was doing? Like, I felt like it created a good like it created ambience and it felt real because you're
It's
again
true.
immersing yourself in the world. But was there anything more to it? This is I think for people like us, like we probably didn't get exactly what was going on because of the language itself. Like we're
Yes.
probably not
Yes.
understanding what's actually being said in those
Yes.
sections. It didn't feel like
Yes.
exposition, thank God.
No.
Like it wasn't just
No.
ongoing telling us what's going on. It had a
No.
different purpose. Was it what what did you sort of think of
I
that? What
I to be honest, I firstly felt very disoriented by all of it.
yes,
But I
yeah.
think where I forgive it for some of that is because I think some of what the director has chosen to weave in through that background commentary, whether it's a song or news or snippets from a Tamil movie,
Mm.
maybe they answer some of the mysteries in this plot. And I don't know because I'd need to listen to it again
Yeah.
because I missed so much of it. But I
Yes.
observed when Mammootty goes to sleep for the first time as James, just before he's about to wake up. The song that is
Mm.
playing "Is There a God? Where is the
Yeah.
God?" And there's a religious element to this
Yes.
movie because they're on a religious pilgrimage. There's a lot of Christian paraphernalia at the start of this film, a lot of
Hmm.
crosses and everything. When James transitions into being Sundaram, he becomes a very devout Hindu worshipper,
Yes.
and so maybe there is a religious element to it. But I think there are maybe clues, if not to solve the mystery of what has happened to James, such that he's become Sundaram for a limited period of time, at least maybe understanding what the director's
Hmm.
philosophy is to this film, because even
Yeah.
that is a bit of a mystery to me. Like, what is the message of this film? And I love that
Yeah.
it's not entirely clear, and we can all make of it
Mm.
what we will. But part of me thinks some of that background stuff could be explaining some of what is going on in the film and what
Yeah.
Sundaram is going through. But I can't be 100% confident. That's my initial thought, but I need to watch it again.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I think that's a good take on it. There's definitely some clues laced in there, and some of them I picked up were sort of, almost foreshadowing sometimes or things like that, like
Yes,
the one sort of you mentioned, but other sort of times as well, where they're sort of just talking or putting some dialogue in. I think, yeah, there's definitely a very strong spiritual and religious element
that's right.
to this because
One,
like, I think, sorry, go for it.
no, no, go for it, man. Yeah.
I was gonna say, like I think when he first comes to the house, they're talking about like the planet alignment and stuff like that.
Yes.
Something like that's going on. So there's
Yes.
definitely there's some element of this, the higher picture or whatever you want to make of that that's
Yes.
instilled in this movie somehow.
Uh, totally. And you might recall in one of the first scenes, James is about to leave and get on the bus, and he's talking to a receptionist or something. And he
Yes,
looks at
yes,
a
yes.
quote on the wall and he asks, "What does this mean?" And the quote is something about like death is sinking into sleep and waking up is being
Mm.
reborn. Like that
Yeah,
must
yeah,
mean
yeah.
something because he
Yes.
goes to sleep as James and wakes up as Sundaram. Like
Yep.
that means something. What that actually means, what it
Yep.
means for him to transition between two completely different characters, I'm
Mm.
unclear of it, but I love the mystery of it, and I like the idea that you can go to sleep as one person and wake up as
Yep.
a completely different person. Like I think there are
Yeah, yeah,
clues
yeah.
littered out through this film. Man, I would love to sit down with this director and like I don't necessarily need to understand what happened to James Sundaram, but
Yep.
I would love to see what message the director was trying to get at with this because I have my own theories,
Yeah.
but I don't know if they're correct. It could just be my own interpretation.
No, that'd be amazing. Lilo Jose Pellissery, if you're listening, feel free to come on the show anytime, and we'll have a chat with you.
Love it. Would love it.
Nah, it was really a deep movie, which there's definitely some philosophy which I think will require a second viewing. I think
Yes.
potentially even more, and even then it might not be clear as to what the
Yes.
message of this overall movie was, because it's that kind of movie. I think
That's right.
it is a whatever he's trying to preach is larger than a general story. It's about life
Yes.
and
That's right.
how we interpret that ourselves. So it could be different for everyone, which I'm sure
That's it.
that was the intention.
Can I give
Before,
one of my
yeah,
interpretations, man, of what this all
yeah,
means?
sure, sure, yeah, go for it, yeah,
Look, and this is completely my own take, but
yeah.
I just feel, and maybe this is what I wanted to read into it, but I like the idea that life is just strange and there are unknowable elements to life
Mhm.
and things that happen. right? There's no maybe good reason for why James fell asleep and woke up as Sundaram and then went back again to being James.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the idea that there are certain things that happen in our lives that don't entirely make sense, and we don't dwell on it too much. We might just go, "Oh, that's a bit weird," or we
Yeah.
see something on the news or something that happens to someone else, and you're like, "Oh, wow, that's interesting as to why that happens." But you know, people might find the answers to these unknowable things by religion or like faith.
Mm-hmm.
Other people might be like, no, there's a scientific reason for why something has happened. You just need to look at it carefully. But I kind of like the idea that, that there's an element of life that for all the rationality we live in that we just can't solve. And
Yeah.
it just is different and it's unknowable. And that world always exists. And occasionally we come into contact with it. And we will never have an answer. And we just accept that life is sometimes a little bit strange. And I
Yeah.
really just love that idea a little bit. It reminds me of a film called Picnic at Hanging Rock. Army, have you
Mm-hmm.
seen that one at all?
Ah, it's a Australian movie, right?
That's an Australian movie, a great
Yeah.
Aussie
Yeah.
movie, but also just a great movie, period, with a
Yeah.
mystery that is something like this. Basically, the premise is
Yeah.
some girls in 1900 or the turn of the 20th
Mm-hmm.
century at a boarding school go on a outing to Hanging Rock in Victoria, and four of them disappear. One of them comes back and has no idea what happened to her during the intervening periods. The other three, you never hear from
Wow.
again. They vanish into the landscape. There's no explanation in the movie to what happened to those girls.
Oh my god.
They just disappear. And it is a haunting film. And maybe there's an Australian element to it with our nature being both beautiful and
Mm-hmm.
a little bit scary. But
Yeah.
it reminded me of this film that there's, parts of life that just can't be explained.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful and interesting and tragic, and all of those elements are in this movie as well.
I definitely want to touch on some movies also that this reminded me of.
Yes.
That's a great one, which I'm definitely going to check out. But in terms of interpretation, I mean, I love your take, man. That itself
Y-
is pretty amazing, and to have, if that's what he was aiming for, and to put that into the small village, is
yes.
fantastic because you show the unpredictability of life. Almost a
Exactly.
very predictable
Exactly.
place in the world, the most predictable place you could argue.
Yes.
Like, a small village,
That's right.
low community. He has a very simple life. He just wakes up, makes coffee,
That's right.
goes to the field, pets his dog, spends time with his family,
That's
goes to
right.
the bar. That's his life. But
That's
within
right.
that, the unpredictability is nothing less, right? Like,
That's
it can
right. Yeah,
strike
yeah, yeah.
to anyone at any
It can
time and
happen to
create
anyone.
havoc.
That's right. That's right.
And you see the chaos, right? The chaos that's going on in that world is as big as
Yes.
anything else that's happened in any movie. Like,
100%.
it's you don't feel like it's a small deal or anything like that. It's a
No,
huge deal.
it
Um,
is a huge deal.
so that's a great one. But you did mention like I can't really think of what the bigger picture of this is. I think I'm probably along the same lines of you around the unpredictability, and that's what the religious elements that you mentioned are on top of it.
Yes.
There's definitely some like spiritual element, as I said, that it feels like a spirit has walked into his body, which is what
100%.
it is like. But man, you mentioned
Yes.
like he turns back to James.
Yes.
Does he turn back to James?
Oh, plot
Because
twist. What's your
I
take on that?
I don't think he turned back to James. I think he's still
Oh,
I still think he's Sundaram. And this is gonna sound funny. But
okay.
I reckon this movie, to
Hit me.
solve this movie, you have to look at the main character in this movie aside from Mammootty, and that is the dog.
The dog. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, the
the,
dog. Yeah,
the
okay.
reason the reason I say
Why
that
the
is
dog?
because okay, so the reason I say that is when he comes back as when he comes into the town as Sundram, let's say that a
Yep.
spirit has walked into his body and the dog recognizes that spirit. Because when he sees the dog comes up to him and greets him like he would an owner, like he
Like you
doesn't,
would like a
and
Sundaram. Yeah,
especially
okay.
especially street dogs like that one. It's not like a domestic pet. Like they're normally a bit more cautious to just approach people sometimes,
Yes.
especially if they're not part of the village. Like a new person comes in, be a bit
Yep.
tentative. So
Yes.
obviously the dog has recognized something in um, Sundaram,
Yes.
and not James. So I believe he's transformed into Sundaram at the end. No, what's it called?
Interesting.
At that time. But
At that
then what
point, yep.
happens is he goes through the process of life, and we see how heartbreaking it is, as we touched on at the
Yes.
beginning, as to sort of what's happened to him and how no one recognizes him. There's no point. He feels like life is pointless. His wife doesn't recognize him. His kid doesn't want to eat with him. No one in the village knows who he is anymore. They look at him. All the things that were important to him have crumbled,
Yes.
as you sort of mentioned.
It's crumbling
Whole
around
world
him. Yes.
is collapsed, and we see how tragically that impacts him. Um, So then basically at that point when that's happened and he wakes up, after
I see
a
where you're going
slumber or
with this.
something like that, he wakes up
Yes.
and then he has to make the decision. What does he want to do now? He's Sundaram. Does he want to keep living as Sundaram in this town with his family that don't know him or recognize him? Or
Yes.
does he want to live a life now with um, this new family, the
Yes.
Malayalis,
Yes.
basically? And he's
Wow.
obviously can speak both languages, it seems
Yep.
like.
Yes.
So I'm not sure the language question is interesting. How interchangeable are those two languages? I know that they're quite
Right.
must be different, but I know, like for instance, like my wife speaks Kannada, so I can understand quite a bit of Kannada. And when I watch Telugu movies, I can pick up a lot of words that they're saying.
Right.
And
Yes.
knowing it's like our neighbor is uh Sri Lankan Tamil, like yourself, and she
Yep.
sort of mentions how she can understand a lot of Malayalam
Yeah.
without sort of even thinking that much because it's quite
Yeah, yeah.
similar. So I think there must be some like interchangeable words
Commonalities.
that they can do.
Yes.
So he does say the word at the end. Like I think he says vani, which means to come. Well, he
Right.
says let's go or something like that,
Yes. Yes.
which must be similar in Tamil and Malayalam, or it might just be a
Yes.
word that is commonly known in South India. So
Yeah.
then at the end when they're going off, all right, if he is James, the dog is following him along on
Oh,
the
it
bus.
runs after the bus.
Yeah, so
Right. Yeah, yeah,
that just
yeah.
makes me suspect, like, and maybe I'm not suspect, maybe I've
Yeah,
not
that
picked a hole
is
here. Maybe I'm missing
no.
something, and if that
No,
is, I'm
no.
completely fine with it if anyone calls it out. But I don't know. I think like
Dude, that
why would the dog follow him if he was James?
it's a good point. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
100%. And you're right. When he wakes up as James again, or, pretending to be James, he doesn't look back at his old Sundaram family and asks, "Who are you?" He kind
yes,
of just like looks at them knowingly and then moves to his new
correct.
family, James's family or whatever,
Yeah.
and says, "Let's go." So there's some understanding of who they are.
Mhm,
And maybe, yeah, you're right. He's making a conscious choice that that community has now rejected him or doesn't
mhm.
believe him to be Sundaram, and he's decided, here's this other family that wants me and needs me. I'll go
Yeah,
create a life there. Man, interesting. Interesting.
yeah.
I could buy
Interesting,
that.
man.
Yeah.
Because like what he's changing his religion, he's
Yeah.
changing like
Yeah. Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
means. Because it's such a seeing someone go through that is so heartbreaking. Like it's so heartbreaking to see somebody that believes in everything that he's believed in his whole life to suddenly
Yes.
disappear just like that, and you're like,
Taken from him.
what? That itself is so powerful. So what do you do like in the situation? It's for him. It must just be like
Yes.
it's better. I just don't do this anymore because life is too difficult like this.
Yes.
So that was my
I
impressions.
like
Like,
it.
if you listen to this, please give us your
Yeah.
interpretation
Let us
of what
know.
you thought this movie was about, because it's really interesting. Because I'm not even sure if I just missed something completely obvious, which dispels what I was thinking.
Either.
But I mean, it was a cool movie to watch. I haven't seen a movie with open interpretation at that in a while.
Not at this level, man. Like
Yeah,
this, because this is not even just about solving necessarily this individual mystery. It's about like a broader idea that's, maybe you wake up and you're somebody else too, and you slept or
yeah,
something. Like I think there's a small mystery here of what happened between James and Sundaram, but maybe there's a broader point as well being
hmm,
made that, it's difficult to know what that is. But yeah,
yeah.
I feel like there are levels to this mystery.
No, definitely right, man. The other theory that I've seen, which is popular, I want to get
Mm,
your take on
yeah.
this. Was this all just a dream?
Oh, look, could have been 100%.
Yeah, because
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
there's some like strange occurrences that happen, right? Like for one, everyone falls asleep on the bus together. Then at the
yeah.
very end, we see the whole town is asleep. Like
Oh,
everyone
yeah, yeah, yeah.
is asleep.
Yes,
Like I just found that a bit strange that every single person is asleep. So was he just in a dream state about this entire time? And he looks in the mirror, he realizes that something's going on, or something weird was happening. So that could be a thing that it was just an entire dream. But the dog theory dispels it for me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The dog is the silver bullet here.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Look, I think that is an equally valid interpretation. Like this is all just a dream that he has had, and he's woken up from it, and life will go on as James.
Mm,
Well, all of these theories are like
yes.
100% valid. I think.
Because he did mention something at the start of the movie, right? He's saying like, normally I don't have a hard time sleeping, but I couldn't sleep last night.
Yes,
So he
that's
might
right.
just
He
be
couldn't sleep.
drowsy, and he
Yeah.
just had a bad night, and that just happens when you have a dream.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, there's so much in this movie that you could sort of look at it in a different perspective, and that's the beauty about this. It's not just sort
Yes.
of you know, you can have definitely debates about the movie and what it means, which is
100%.
beautiful.
And I think there are elements of this film with us just not being able to maybe understand the backdrop as well, because there's a lot of, I think, Tamil-based stuff that is going on.
Yeah,
I know, like, some of the films being referenced are very old Tamil films,
yeah, right.
and, like, it's just also an interesting choice that this movie is a Malayalam film set entirely in
Yeah,
essentially Tamil Nadu as well. And so I feel like maybe there's references that have gone over our head because we don't have the background of Tamil cinema
yeah.
or Malayalam cinema, and so maybe there's stuff that we've missed that we just won't be able to appreciate as much as others who are a bit more ingrained in Malayalam and, more importantly, Tamil cinema.
Yeah, also on the whole language front as well. Like I was sort of
Mm.
reading a little bit about this, and it basically, but there's obviously two languages
Yep.
going on in this movie, Tamil and Malayali, and I think like they don't, at least Netflix in our version didn't really let us know what language was
No, that's
playing.
right. Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so because I could pick up a little bit just because we watch so many Malayalam movies
Yes. Yeah,
on
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
how Malayalam sounds compared to Tamil.
Yes.
Um, Honestly, I don't know. It might have been a bigger impact for somebody that actually speaks the languages, but
I think so,
for
yeah.
us, I think it probably didn't mean much because we can't understand the
No.
nuances of either language.
Yes.
But that was interesting. I wonder if Netflix would do something like I read some comments on Twitter and stuff like that about how they should consider changing the color so that you know what language
Oh,
they're speaking,
interesting. Yeah,
or
yeah,
maybe
yeah,
even
yeah.
just put like a bracket and say like MAL and when they're speaking Malayalam and TAM or
Yeah.
something when they're speaking Tamil.
Yes. Yes.
Uh, they could do something like that.
Yeah.
Uh, Kind of interesting. It's like basically another movie that is combining languages, and we've seen this.
That's
We've
right,
seen the
not the
use of
first time.
language in
Yeah.
going all the way back to Jalan Kanamana, how they integrate like I think it was Kannada in that movie
There's, like,
with
4 different
Malayalam
languages.
and
Yeah,
Hindi
yeah,
was in
yeah.
there.
Yes.
So they throw a lot together. They obviously and language is very important
Yeah.
part of them, part of the culture. But man, I think we'll move on a little bit to I was just going to touch on before we went to our ratings, man.
Yeah.
Other movies this reminded you of. You mentioned Picnic at Hanging Rock. That's an
Yep.
amazing movie and I want to check that out.
Yep.
But any other things this reminded you of?
No, I'm trying to think of, just open-ended films, I guess, like,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
it's a bit unclear what happened. Not sure if you watched the movie Doubt with, like, Amy Adams
No.
and Meryl Streep, where it's really unclear what happened, but that is a very self-contained mystery. It is just solving a thing that
Yeah,
happened and
right.
figuring out whether it happened. I don't think there's a broader picture to it. So I feel like this stands alone. I think you could probably go back and observe a couple of movies from maybe the 70s with Italian
Mm.
directors. I'm not sure
Oh.
if you've heard of a film called La Ventura. And
Mm.
that's a terrific film about essentially a woman wanders, that there's a bunch of rich people having a party on a yacht. They stop over in a small island in Italy, and
Yeah.
a woman wanders off into the island and she's never seen from again. And the people
Right.
are just trying to figure out where
That's
she
crazy.
went.
Yeah.
So there is elements of existentialism that are
Yes.
being discussed here beyond just a minor mystery. So it takes me back to some of those older films that are trying to reach for something a bit more
Hmm.
transcendent than just solve, like, here's a crime to solve or here's a
Yeah.
mystery to solve. So some of those movies come to mind, but in recent times, not a whole lot,
Wow.
man. How about you?
Yeah. This took me to a place of movies that I have watched, which are definitely more in that sort of poetic, metaphoric um,
Yes, yes,
nature. So I think I've
yes.
mentioned this guy to you before. I used to be a pretty big fan of his. Abbas Kiarostami.
Yeah, yeah. One of your
Yeah,
main
yeah,
guys. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So Iranian director who I think has passed away now, but
Ah,
the way he sort of framed movies was very similar to this because his whole thing was showing the
interesting.
beauty of Iran and the countryside, like this movie does.
Right,
So
right.
the his favorite movie of my favorite movie of his, The Wind Will Carry Us, is basically set again in like a country town in Iran and does the same kind of
Wow.
techniques that Lijo uh, hosts did in this movie, like
Right.
long sceneries, like exaggerated
Long
amount of
shots.
time
Yep.
spent on like going through the countryside. There's one scene in particular where he pours the milk out because he's just destroyed with life or distraught
Oh,
with life, and he
yes.
spills
Yeah.
it everywhere
Gorgeous.
into
Yeah.
the water. But it's
Yes.
like you see the water, you see it like in real time. It's and no cutting, nothing, one shot,
No.
just bird's eye view.
Single
He
take.
did a
Yeah.
lot of that kind of stuff as well. Like you just sort of see water trickling
Right.
down and the stream that could go
Yes.
for time and time. Um, More sort of experimental cinema. Like he did
Yes.
movies like one where he did the whole movie where they just shot out of the camera in a car and the whole movie is just in the car. Basically, they're just talking between
Wow.
mother and son. So it takes me to those
Wow.
places. There's another
Yes.
director, Taiwanese director, with the name Tsai Ming Liang. I don't know if that's exactly how you say it, but he did a movie
Yeah.
called The Journey to the West. And that movie
Right.
was, I don't know if you even call it a movie. It's literally a monk walking as slowly as he can through different parts of the world, I think it was. Or maybe it was parts of
Wow.
America and Italy. But that's all the movie was. That's all. That it's all open for interpretation
Wow.
as to what you think that movie is about. No
Right.
dialogue, nothing. There's the elements cinematically
Wow.
and thematically of
Yes.
those movies, I think,
Yes.
that come into here. But this is kind of a combination because there is more story, I think, in
Yes.
some of those ones. But yeah, that's what this reminded me of. So it took me to a place of
Yeah.
a genre which I've not seen in a long time, and I never expected to watch a Malayalam
No.
movie like this because I don't even see that kind of stuff out of Hollywood. The ones I'm referencing are all international things. Iran and
Yes.
I think he's a Taiwanese director. So
Yeah.
you know,
Wow, man.
it's yeah, it's impressive, man. It's in the same bucket as those movies. There's very few movies that sort of fit that I've
It's
seen.
so limited, I think, and
Yeah.
it sticks with you because of that, because there's a mystery to unravel, but it also is just somehow embeds itself in your brain, and there's a meditative element to it. As you were talking about the
Yes.
monk walking down, walking, really slowly, there is a kind of slowness to this film and a
Yes.
meditativeness that you just kind of feel yourself lapsing into and collapsing into, and it just becomes ingrained in your psyche a little bit. Yeah.
No, it's pretty special movie, man. One that is, as you said, gonna really linger in my mind for a while, and not one that's gonna disappear
No.
that quickly because yeah, it's just so unique and so profound in what it's doing. But yeah, let's get on to the D scale, man. Let's wrap it up. Let's get to D scale and get your final thoughts. You know, a movie that's almost hard to rate just because of the uniqueness of it. You
Yes.
can't really compare it with any of the other movies we've done because it stands on its own. But even saying that, man, where does this sort of sit on your rating system?
Man, this is really tough for me. It's a very clear dynamite. It's
Yeah,
a question as to whether it gets to dope,
yeah.
and I think it does. It's dope.
Oh,
It is dope for me. Can I also
man,
mention the one thing we haven't mentioned is that this movie is funny at
it is.
times.
It
I
is. Yeah.
laughed out loud when he's like when someone's pouring him food at the restaurant
Yeah.
and he goes, "What are you doing? You know I don't like chutney." And the guy's like, "I don't know who you are."
Yes.
I just like burst out laughing. And then he's telling those guys at like the coffee house some stories and he goes away to get his coffee and they're like, "Who is this guy telling us these
Yes.
stories?"
Yes.
And they all burst out laughing. So this movie has so many layers to it. There's the contemplative stuff, there's the philosophical stuff, there's an interesting mystery, funny, beautifully made. Like it's going to stick with me for a very long time, this film, because you don't come across stuff like this. It's a mesmerizing movie, a
Wow.
gorgeous movie, a brilliant performance. I'm giving it dope, man.
Wow. That's the first. I think that's the first movie given a dope man, and deservingly, I think.
It,
Oh, but maybe for a second, you might have given another one or
I
two.
feel like I
But
have.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Nah,
This does
you're
so much for me, man. Like
yeah.
it's going to stay with me for a very long time, and I'll tell people
Nah,
about this film as well.
yeah. Definitely on Netflix, so it should be spread far and wide. Yeah, look, you're right about the comedy part before I give my rating. The like how much he hates on like Tamilian tea and
Oh, I
food
love that.
at the start to then suddenly take a like a 180 and just add more sugar to his tea.
I
It's
love it.
just um
What do I
and
have,
that's
diabetes? Like, funny,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And he's that's all Mammootty. He just has the delivery and the charisma to just be that grouchy but funny sort of older gentleman. Um, you're right.
Brilliant.
There are sort of really funny parts. Even the shock factor when people walk in and be like, "Who the hell are you?" and he's like
Yeah,
just
yeah.
responding like
Running off with the bike in the first thing,
right.
like it's just a normal thing. People like the dude stole our bike, and they're like running after him,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
he's like not a care in the world. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, for me, man, this is yeah. I think I'm going to go on the same boat as you, man, because that's
Yes.
yeah. Let's give this sort of perfect 10 out of 10.
Amazing.
Again, I completely understand if you don't agree with us on this,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
as I said, like it's not like I see these movies that often. There's very specific movies that fall
Yes.
into this category, and it's not a movie I can watch like every day. Like I can't watch
No.
movies like
No. No.
this
No.
all the
No.
time. But when you see a movie like this that's so refreshing and so different, um,
Yes.
and so off mainstream in everything it's doing, it is really refreshing to watch these kind of movies. And like those other movies
Brilliant.
that I'm telling you about, I had to hunt them out. I didn't know about them. Like I had to
Yes,
sort of, I don't even know how I found them, but it wasn't just like on like a mainstream media or like Netflix at that time.
that's it.
So to have this sort of come up randomly on a day which I'm just, looking to review a movie and be blown away like this, it's fantastic. This is, yeah, for me, a straight up dope. This is awesome. Like, yeah, I
Love it.
completely understand the criticisms of this movie with the pacing and maybe that if you didn't get anything out of it, well, nothing actually happened. But that
Yes.
for me, that's kind of the point. Nothing
Yeah,
happened,
that's
but
right.
so much happened. Um,
That's right.
so
It's so
that's
refreshing, and it shows how much you can do with, like, so little, I think,
yeah,
if you just tell an interesting story with terrific acting and dialogue.
yeah.
Man, this is amazing.
This was really good. So, yep, thanks everyone to listening to this. Do let us know your thoughts and what you thought about this. Did you agree with us, or did you just not like this movie because of the slowness and the I guess the sleepy feeling it gives you potentially because of
Yeah.
that. But yeah, do tune in. Of course, we're gonna do a lot more Malayalam movies, probably a lot more Mammootty movies. So this has been really awesome, Sunny. I'm glad we got to cover this movie.
Oh, man, I love it. Glad we did this one. So
Yeah,
pleased.
yeah. All right, guys. Until next time, we'll catch you in the next one.
Catch you guys.